whenever there is an issue that comes up, and I'll actually tackle a controversial issue, violence in school, okay? Violence in schools. I think 99% of Americans agrees that we have to reduce violence in schools. But, I mean, I think that's a kind of a no-brainer. And yet, as soon as there's an incident in any school, the first thing that goes up is we got to take the guns away, you know, we got to reduce the Second Amendment rights. The Second Amendment people, no, we got to protect our liberties. This is, you know, constitutional. So automatically going corners. Immediately, the donations to both sides and the special interests, you know, triple in size. We fight the same battle over 30 times. That we haven't made really any significant progress on the Second Amendment, and the basic issues of how to provide better security for our schools gets lost in the dialogue. No one focuses on the solution. They focus on this one divisive issue that is the panacea, that if somehow we can get rid of the Second Amendment, all violence would end. And we all know, because there's just so many causes of violence in our schools, anywhere from, you know, things like movies where violence is being promoted, things like medication that has suicidal and homicidal side effects, to, you know, mental. So there's a myriad of problems that we have that contribute to violence in schools, and we need to attack all of them and find a way to make our society less violent in general, and especially to protect our children in our schools. No one wants to send their kids to school with fear in their heart. And they are doing it today, and the political system hasn't addressed that. So I would be out there and propose this solution. I would say, let's put on hold any discussion on the Second Amendment till we get something done to solve the problem of violence in schools, and then we can deal with, you know, with the more divisive issues and try to see how we can find ways to ameliorate them.
My name is Wendell Waters. I think I neglected to say that earlier. When I asked my first question, I apologize. I cover Boxford, Middleton, and Topsfield, and I am actually not hearing people call for getting rid of the Second Amendment. What I'm hearing people call for is just reasonable measures for background checks, for instance. But I'm not hearing people call for an end to the Second Amendment. Well,
the way it's portrayed by the Second Amendment crowd is, you know, putting an end to the Second Amendment, and the way it's portrayed by the you know, anti-gun lobby, if you want to call that, is that, you know, guns are the ultimate cause, that if we didn't have guns or we reduced guns. So I think what you're saying, those are reasonable proposals that need to be addressed. But as long as we are going to the extremes, and the extremes dominate the debate, reasonable proposal like you're putting it gets lost in the discussion. So let's start with what we agree upon that we cannot disagree on. Then let's go to the next issues that we should be able to find common ground and a way to address. And we'll get to the extreme issues, and, you know, eventually. But let's not put the extreme issues first, because they will drown out reasonable compromises and reasonable solutions.
How does President Donald Trump's general confrontational approach affect a local race like the 6th Congressional District?
Well, I knew the Trump push was going to come, and I'll tell you this much, that I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, a fellow West Point graduate, not my classmate, a younger person, but and he said, and he's someone that really does not like the president, and he said, you know, you're running on West Point values. And I said, really, what are West Point values? He said, West Point values, you know, the mission of West Point is to inspire and train leaders of character for the nation. And character is defined as honesty, integrity, and courage. And your life and your positions are the embodiment of West Point values. My name is on the ballot to represent the interests of the 6th District. The president's name is not on the ballot. And when the president and the administration does something that's going to be beneficial for our community and for our interests, I will not automatically reject it. I will support it. If the president does something that is ill-advised or is divisive or divisive, I will try to change his mind. And if necessary, I will oppose it. I'm not running here to represent, you know, anybody else's interest except the interests of the people of this district. On national security, I am for strong United States being the preeminent power in the world, guaranteeing global security.
So you have a realist outlook?
Very much a pragmatist, realist outlook. It works in our best interest. We have to change the current system that has been put in place since the Bretton Woods. It's been a really good system. It's benefited us, it's benefited the world, but it's been ossified now, and we have to change the terms of engagement, whether it's in NATO, whether it's in trade deals, and we have to do it strategically. And I'm not quite sure yet. It hasn't been articulated strategically. It's been articulated transactionally, but I think it's a move in the right direction. So I'm very strong on national security. Maintaining, you know, an overwhelming military capability is essential to guarantee our security and our prosperity. I am fiscally conservative. I believe that the more money people have, the better decisions are made for the economy. So that, you know, we should let the government do as little as possible. And that brings me to my social views. I've been endorsed by the Libertarian Party. My social views are totally in line with libertarians. The government has no role in making any decision that individuals should be making for themselves. So
that helps me understand you better too.
So those are my views, and I believe that combination of philosophy is best for our country. That will advance this great gift that our founding fathers have given us, which is our republic. And I'll wax a little professorial here. When the founding fathers 250 years ago created the United States of America and wrote the Declaration of Independence, eventually the Constitution, there was no country in the world, and there had to have been a country in the world that had a government where the legitimacy of governing came from the consent of the governed. 70% of humanity in 1776 were either slaves or serfs. Everyone was working for a very small elite of autocrats, of monarchists, of theocrats. That was humanity 250 years ago. Today, the idea of democracy, the idea of the consent of the governed, giving you the legitimacy to govern, is in 50% of the world have one form or another of democratic government. And the other 50% goes to the charade of elections to claim that they have the legitimacy of the governed. So the idea of democracy and of Republican form of government has triumphed. And with it has come prosperity, with it has come human rights, and we need to maintain that. And in the article that was written about me by Jeff Jacoby in the Boston Globe, he made a point, I made a point that after Rome was the last experiment in democracy, which was 500 years, came 1,000 years of darkness called the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. And you go to any castle in Germany and you see that the sanitary conditions of a prince were far inferior to the sanitary condition of a plebeian in Rome or Pompeii 1,000 years earlier. So the future is not necessarily brighter for our kids. When I talk to most of my friends and when I look at my own children, I don't see them having the same opportunity I have to live the American dreams. I'm really afraid that that is going to be denied to them. And that's unconscionable for us to leave that kind of legacy to future generations, just to line our pockets with one more shekel.